Marcus Chin sat in his car outside the downtown office building, his hands trembling as he gripped the steering wheel. In exactly 15 minutes, he was supposed to walk through those glass doors for the interview that could change everything. The interview he'd been preparing for during every spare moment between his two jobs and taking care of his daughter. But right now, across the street, a woman had just collapsed on the sidewalk, and no one was stopping to help. Before we continue with what happened next, if you love stories that restore your faith in humanity, please subscribe to Sage Stories and hit that like button. We share true tales of kindness and courage that remind us of the goodness in people. Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts. Now, let me tell you how this single father's impossible choice led to something he never could have imagined. Marcus had been awake since 4:30 that morning, his alarm cutting through the darkness of his small apartment bedroom. He'd showered quietly, careful not to wake his 8-year-old daughter Emma, who was sleeping in the room next door. The suit he'd borrowed from his friend hung on the bathroom door, freshly pressed the night before. He'd practiced his interview answers in the mirror while shaving, running through his resume highlights, trying to sound confident despite the knot of anxiety in his stomach. 3 years. That's how long it had been since his wife Sarah died in a car accident, leaving him alone with a 5-year-old daughter and a mountain of medical debt that seemed to grow no matter how many extra shifts he picked up. Marcus worked as a security guard during the day and drove for a rideshare service most evenings, catching sleep in scattered fragments between his responsibilities. Emma stayed with Mrs. Rodriguez downstairs after school until he got home, and the guilt of not being there for dinner, for homework, for bedtime stories ate at him constantly. This job could change everything. Associate Director of Operations at Henderson Global, a tech company expanding their Seattle offices. It meant real hours, benefits, maybe even the chance to take Emma to the zoo on weekends without calculating gas money. He'd applied on a whim 2 months ago, never expecting to hear back. When the interview request came, he'd almost deleted it thinking it was spam. Marcus pulled into the parking garage at 11:15 for his noon interview. Early, just like he'd planned. He sat in his car reviewing his notes one more time, trying to calm his breathing. This was it. His shot at giving Emma the life she deserved. A chance to be the dad who came home at 6 instead of midnight. To help with her math homework instead of just signing the papers she left on the kitchen counter. At 11:45, he locked his car and headed toward the street. The November air was crisp, carrying the smell of rain that hadn't started falling yet. Downtown Seattle bustled with lunch crowds, people in expensive coats hurrying between buildings. Marcus tugged at his borrowed tie and started across the street toward Henderson Global's gleaming tower. That's when he saw her. A woman in a burgundy coat stumbled on the sidewalk about 20 feet ahead. At first it looked like she'd just tripped, but then she went down hard, her briefcase flying open and papers scattering across the concrete. People flowed around her like water around a stone. A few glanced down. No one stopped. Marcus froze. He looked at his watch. 11:47. 13 minutes until the most important interview of his life. The building entrance was right there. He could see the Henderson Global logo through the glass doors. The woman tried to push herself up and collapsed again. Her face had gone pale, her breathing rapid and shallow. Marcus's feet moved before his mind caught up. He ran to her, dropping to his knees beside her on the cold sidewalk. "Ma'am, are you okay? Can you hear me?" He gently touched her shoulder. Her eyes were unfocused, her skin clammy with sweat. She tried to speak but the words came out slurred. "Can't breathe, chest." Marcus's heart hammered. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911, giving the dispatcher their location while loosening the scarf around the woman's neck. She looked to be in her 50s, her gray hair styled professionally, her burgundy coat expensive. One of her heels had come off when she fell. "Ambulance is on the way," Marcus told her, keeping his voice calm even though adrenaline surged through him. "Just try to breathe slowly. I'm staying right here with you." He looked up desperately at the passing crowd. "Someone get her some water, please." A young man in a coffee shop uniform rushed over with a bottle. Marcus helped prop the woman up slightly, supporting her weight. She grabbed his hand, her grip surprisingly strong. "My medication," she gasped. "Briefcase." Marcus scanned the scattered contents. Papers, a laptop, pens, a makeup bag. There. A small orange prescription bottle near the curb. He grabbed it, checked the label quickly, and shook out a pill. "This one. For your heart." She nodded. He helped her take it with the water, his own hands shaking now. 11:53. 7 minutes. The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. "You're going to be okay," Marcus said, though he had no idea if that was true. "Help is almost here." "What's your name?" "Victoria," she whispered. "Thank you for stopping." The words hit him harder than they should have. How many people had walked by? How close had he come to being one of them? The ambulance arrived at 11:56. Paramedics took over with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, asking questions, loading Victoria onto a stretcher. One of them turned to Marcus. "You did good, man. Getting that medication in her probably saved her life. Are you family?" "No, I saw her fall. We're taking her to Seattle General. You should come give a statement." Marcus looked at his watch. 11:59. The Henderson Global building stood across the street, its doors still tantalizingly close. He could make it. He could sprint across the street, apologize for being late, explain the emergency. They'd understand, right? Victoria was being lifted into the ambulance. Her eyes found his through the crowd, frightened and grateful. Marcus took a deep breath. "I'll follow you to the hospital." He climbed into his car, his hands leaving sweat prints on the steering wheel. His phone buzzed. A reminder, job interview, Henderson Global, 12 p.m. He stared at it for a long moment, then turned the key and followed the ambulance. At the hospital, Marcus gave his statement to the intake nurse, provided what details he could about finding Victoria and her medication. The emergency room was chaos, beds separated by curtains, monitors beeping, staff rushing between patients. Marcus sat in a plastic chair in the waiting area, still in his interview suit, and called the number Henderson Global had given him. "Hi, this is Marcus Chen. I had an interview scheduled for noon today with the hiring committee. I'm so sorry, but there's been an emergency and I can't make it." His voice cracked slightly. "I know this is unprofessional. I understand if you need to move forward with other candidates. I'm really sorry." The receptionist's voice was sympathetic but noncommittal. "I'll pass along the message, Mr. Chen. I hope everything is all right." The call ended. Marcus sat there in the fluorescent lighting, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and the sounds of medical equipment, and felt the weight of what he'd just lost settle over him. 3 months of preparation. The chance to change Emma's life. Gone because he couldn't walk past someone who needed help. He thought about calling Mrs. Rodriguez, about picking up Emma early, about going home and pretending today had never happened. But something kept him in that chair. Maybe he needed to know Victoria was okay. Maybe he needed this one thing today to turn out right. An hour passed. Then 2. Marcus called Mrs. Rodriguez to let her know he'd be late. He bought terrible coffee from a vending machine and watched people come and go through the emergency room doors, each one carrying their own crisis, their own story. At 2:30, a doctor emerged and approached him. "Mr. Chen. I'm Dr. Patel. The woman you helped, Victoria Henderson, is stable. She had a cardiac episode, but because of your quick thinking with her medication, we were able to prevent a full heart attack. She's asking for you." Henderson. The name registered somewhere in Marcus's exhausted brain, but he was too drained to make the connection. The doctor led him through the maze of curtained areas to a quiet corner where Victoria lay in a hospital bed, monitors tracking her heartbeat, and 4 in her arm. She looked small and vulnerable without her coat, dressed in a hospital gown, but her eyes were clear now. "You stayed," she said when she saw him. Marcus approached the bedside. "I wanted to make sure you were okay. I'm told I have you to thank for that." She studied his face. "You're wearing a suit. Did I make you late for something important?" He tried to smile. "Just a job interview." "It's fine." "Just a job interview," she repeated. "Which company?" "Henderson Global. But please don't worry about it. I'm just glad you're okay." Something shifted in her expression. "What position?" "Associate Director of Operations." "It's fine, really. They'll find someone else." Victoria closed her eyes for a long moment. When she opened them, they were wet. "Do you know who I am?" Marcus shook his head, confused. "I'm Victoria Henderson. I founded Henderson Global 32 years ago. I was on my way back from a board meeting when... She gestured vaguely at the hospital room. You missed your interview with my company to save my life. The words hung in the air between them. Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath him. He'd seen her picture on the company website during his research. He'd just been too panicked to recognize her on the sidewalk. Oh, was all he could manage. Tell me about yourself, Marcus Chen. Victoria's voice was steady despite the monitors beeping beside her. Tell me why you wanted this job. So he did. Sitting in a plastic chair beside her hospital bed, Marcus told her about Sarah, about Emma, about working 2 jobs and still barely making rent. About wanting to give his daughter a childhood that didn't involve counting pennies and skipping school field trips. About being so tired he sometimes fell asleep at red lights. About the guilt of missing Emma's school play last month because he was driving someone to the airport. Victoria listened without interrupting, her hands folded on the white hospital blanket. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. I built my company on a simple principle, she finally said. Character matters more than credentials. I can teach someone operations management. I can't teach them to stop when everyone else walks by. To sacrifice something precious for a stranger who needed help. She reached for the call button. Nurse, could you please bring me my phone from my personal items? Ms. Henderson, you should rest, Marcus protested. I've been resting. Now I'm working. The nurse brought her phone and she began typing with slow, deliberate movements. I'm emailing my VP of Human Resources. You'll start as Associate Director next Monday if you want the position. The salary is $85,000, full benefits, 4 weeks vacation. Marcus couldn't breathe. I don't understand. I've been running this company for 3 decades. You know how many people I've interviewed who talk about integrity and values? Thousands. You know how many I've seen actually demonstrate it when it cost them something real? I can count them on one hand. She met his eyes. You gave up your chance at this job to help me. I'm giving it back. But you haven't seen my work, my references, I saw everything I needed to see on that sidewalk. Victoria's voice was firm. Henderson Global needs leaders who make the right choice when no one's watching. When it's hard. When it costs them something. She paused. Besides, you kept me calm. You found my medication. You stayed to make sure I was okay. That shows problem solving, attention to detail, and follow through. Consider this your working interview. Marcus felt tears burning behind his eyes. I have to pick up my daughter from school at 3:30. Then you should probably leave soon. Traffic is terrible this time of day. Victoria smiled. HR will email you the paperwork tonight. Welcome to Henderson Global, Marcus. He stood up, not quite believing this was real. Thank you. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep being the person who stops when others walk by. Marcus picked up Emma from Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment at 3:45, hugging her so tight she squealed. That night, over pizza they could actually afford, he told her about his day. About the lady who needed help and the choice he'd made. Emma listened with wide eyes. So you helped her instead of going to your interview? Emma asked. Yeah, sweetheart. And she gave you the job anyway. She did. Emma thought about this while carefully picking pepperoni off her slice. Daddy, you always tell me to help people even when it's hard. I do. You're really good at following your own rules. Marcus laughed, but there were tears in his eyes again. Out of the mouths of 8-year-olds. He started at Henderson Global the following Monday. The job was challenging and rewarding in ways he'd forgotten work could be. For the first time in 3 years, he came home before dark. He helped Emma with her homework. They ate dinner together. On weekends, they went to the zoo, the aquarium, the science center. Marcus watched his daughter bloom with the simple gift of his presence. But the story didn't end there. Victoria Henderson became more than his boss. She became a mentor and, eventually, a friend. She joined Emma for her 9th birthday party, teaching a room of giggling girls how to code simple programs on tablets. She'd funded a scholarship at Emma's school for kids who'd lost parents. And she'd changed Henderson Global's hiring practices to include community service and character references alongside traditional qualifications. 6 months after that November day, Victoria called Marcus into her office. I want you to lead our new initiative, she said. We're partnering with Seattle Children's Hospital to provide job training and placement for single parents. I want Henderson Global to be the kind of company that gives people like you a chance. Marcus thought about that moment on the sidewalk. The choice that had felt like losing everything. The choice that had changed his entire life. I'd be honored, he said. Sometimes the moments that test us the most become the moments that define us. Marcus could have kept walking. He had every reason to put his daughter's needs, his own desperate circumstances, above a stranger on the sidewalk. No one would have blamed him. But he stopped. And in stopping, he discovered something profound, that the person we choose to be when it costs us everything is the person we really are. Victoria had seen that person. She'd bet her company on it. And Marcus spent every day proving her right. The truth is, we all face these moments. Maybe not as dramatic as missing a life-changing interview, but moments when helping someone means sacrificing our comfort, our time, our plans. The person who needs directions when we're running late. The colleague struggling with a project when we have our own deadline. The neighbor whose lights are off during a storm. These moments ask us who we are when no one's keeping score. Marcus and Emma still live in Seattle. He's now VP of Operations at Henderson Global. Emma just started high school, where she volunteers as a peer mentor for kids who've experienced loss. And Marcus still carries the prescription bottle Victoria gave him after she recovered, the one that started everything. It's empty now, but he keeps it on his desk as a reminder, what we give away when it costs us something is what comes back to us multiplied. If this story touched your heart, we'd love to hear about a time when you or someone you know chose kindness even when it was difficult. Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes we all need to be reminded that goodness is real, that character matters, and that the best things in life come from the moments when we choose compassion over convenience. Because you never know when the stranger you help might just change your life forever.